I'm Eleanor, a 55-year-old woman who thought she had seen everything in life until my own daughter turned my world upside down. But I was able to turn it back around and make all my tormentors regret what they did to me. Sit back and get comfortable. I'm about to begin. In August 2023, I hung up my librarian cardigan after 25 years of shushing rowdy teens and dusting off dusty tomes. I was ready to kick back, maybe sip some chamomile tea in the afternoon sun. I'd raised my adopted daughter Lily from a tiny 1-year-old, found abandoned with a rare blood disorder that made her frilier than a dandelion in a storm. I worked double shifts at the library, my fingers sore from scanning books, and spent my evenings stitching handmade quilts to sell at the local craft fair. Every penny went to her medical bills. Those hospital invoices stacked higher than my old encyclopedia collection. I even walked away from my marriage when my ex, a stubborn fool, said he wouldn't raise someone else's kid. I chose Lily, no question, because that little girl's big eyes looked at me like I was her whole world. I'd bought Lily and her husband James a cozy house in our small town. A cute 2-story with a wraparound porch I dreamed of retiring in. I figured moving back there would be like one of those heartwarming family reunions you see in sappy movies. I pictured us laughing over old photo albums, maybe baking cookies together like we did when Lily was little. Oh, how I misread that script. I showed up with my battered suitcase, my favorite quilt folded neatly inside, and a heart full of hope. The house smelled like fresh paint and Lily's lavender candles, which I'd always teased her about overbuying. I sat them down at their oak dining table, the one I'd picked out at a flea market years ago. My hands were clammy, my smile wobbly, but I was excited to share my news. "Lily James," I said, trying to sound chipper despite the butterflies doing a square dance in my stomach, "I've retired from the library. I'm ready to settle down here, spend some time with you both." Before I could mention my plans to help with their dreams, maybe fund James's new coffee shop idea, Lily's face turned colder than a January morning. "You quit?" she snapped, her voice sharp enough to cut through my optimism like a hot knife through butter. "That was our steady income, Eleanor. What, you're just gonna live off us now like some freeloader?" My chest tightened. Freeloader? Me? The woman who'd spent decades scrimping to give her everything? I glanced at James, hoping he'd say something, anything to soften the blow. But he just kept scrolling on his phone, nodding like he was agreeing with the weather report. My throat burned and I swear I felt my heart crack like that teacup I mentioned earlier. I'd given Lily everything, my youth, my savings, my dreams. I'd stayed up nights sewing quilts until my eyes stung, just to keep her healthy. I'd skipped vacations, new dresses, even a decent pair of shoes so she could have a shot at a good life. And now, sitting at that table, I felt like I'd been demoted from mom to unwanted guest faster than you can say overdue fine. The betrayal wasn't just a sting. It was a deep, aching wound, like finding out your favorite book ends with the hero turning villain. Here's the kicker though, I had a secret up my sleeve. My mentor Beatrice, a brilliant botanist who treated me like the sister I never had passed away and left me $5 million in her will. $5 million. Can you imagine? I was sitting on a fortune that could have changed their lives, but I didn't breathe a word. Not yet. I wanted to see how far they'd take this. Call it a test or maybe just an old lady's stubborn streak, but I needed to know if they'd ever see me as more than a paycheck. Of course, we could have come up with something. So I invited them over for dinner, to a table I had restored myself with a sander and a lot of prayer. The air smelled of roast chicken, which I had cooked in the hope of lightening the mood, but my stomach was doing somersaults like a clumsy gymnast. I cleared my throat, my voice wobbly as a newborn colt. "James is starting that coffee shop, right? I could help with planning or maybe chip in some funds," I said, trying to sound upbeat despite the knot in my chest. I thought they'd be thrilled, me offering to support their big dream. Instead, Clara, James's mom, an interior designer who acted like she decorated the White House, let out a laugh so sharp it could have sliced bread. "Business needs experts, Eleanor," she said, her perfectly manicured nails tapping the table. "What do you know from shelving books all day?" Her tone was sweeter than saccharin but twice as fake, and I felt my face burn like I'd stuck it in the oven. Then Olivia, James's sister, a wannabe influencer with a penchant for overpriced yoga retreats, piled on. "It's a complicated process, not just flipping through manuals like you do at the library," she said, smirking as she flicked her ponytail. I swear I felt like I'd been gutted with a rusty spoon. I'd paid for their house, every shingle, every nail. I'd covered their wedding, from the overpriced cake to the fairy lights. And don't get me started on the cars I'd helped finance so they could drive in style. And here they were, acting like I was some dim-witted nobody who'd wandered into their fancy lives by mistake. Clara wasn't done, though. She leaned forward, her designer scarf practically screaming, "I'm better than you," and hit me with the real zinger. "If you're staying here, Eleanor, you'll need to cover the business consultant fees," she said, all businesslike, as if I was her personal ATM. "I'll handle picking the right people, of course." My hands shook under the table, gripping my napkin so hard I thought it'd tear. They didn't want me in their home, laughing over old memories or sharing Sunday dinners. They wanted my paycheck, the one I'd earned organizing book fairs and chasing late fees. I mumbled, "I'll think about it." But inside I was screaming louder than a kettle left on the stove. That night I sat in the guest room, my old sewing room, mind you, with my quilt still hanging on the wall, and stared at the ceiling. Their words spun in my head like a bad country song on repeat. "What do you know? Complicated process. Cover the fees." I'd spent decades believing Lily saw me as her mom, the woman who'd stitched her life together stitch by stitch. But now, I felt like a fool, like I'd been reading a fairy tale where I wasn't even a side character, just the help. The betrayal wasn't just a sting. It was a deep, hollow ache, like finding out your favorite recipe's been ruined by someone swapping sugar for salt. I hadn't told them about the $5 million, and after that dinner, I was glad I'd kept my mouth shut. I needed to know just how far they'd pushed this old gal before I showed my cards. A few days after that awful dinner where Lily and her in-laws treated me like a walking ATM, I figured I'd try one last time to mend things. It was a sunny morning in August 2023, and I invited Lily, James, and Clara for coffee. The kitchen smelled of my homemade blueberry muffins, fresh from the oven, and I'd set out my favorite floral mugs, hoping a warm drink might soften their edges. My hands were still shaky from Clara's demand that I fund their business consultants, but I plastered on a smile, thinking maybe we could talk like family. We sat around the table, sunlight streaming through the lace curtains I'd sewn years ago. Before I could even offer a second muffin, Lily leaned forward, her eyes sharp as the pins in my old sewing kit. "You're only 55, Eleanor," she said, her voice cutting like a paper edge. "You're too young to just sit around doing nothing." I blinked, my coffee mug frozen halfway to my mouth. Sit around? I just retired after 25 years of wrangling library books and raising her from a sickly toddler with a blood disorder. I'd sold quilts at craft fairs to pay her medical bills, given up my marriage to keep her safe. Did that sound like sitting around to her? Clara, James's mom, chimed in with that fake sweet smile of hers. "There's a community center hiring assistants," she said, stirring her coffee like she was plotting world domination. "You could do that, Eleanor. Or maybe a retirement home's front desk. You'd need to contribute if you're staying here." Contribute? In the house I'd paid for, down to the last shingle? My jaw dropped so low it nearly hit the table. I'd scraped together every cent for their mortgage, their wedding, their shiny SUV parked out front, and now they wanted me to contribute like some boarder who'd overstayed her welcome? The real gut twister came when Lily leaned back, sipping her coffee like she was delivering a royal decree. "There's a shared housing facility nearby," she said, all casual. "It's practical." James, who hadn't looked up from his phone all morning, finally spoke, his voice flat as day-old soda. "I found a place with an opening. You could move in tomorrow." Tomorrow? My heart sank like a stone in a pond. The daughter I'd saved from an orphanage, whose life I'd rebuilt stitch by stitch, was ready to shove me into a group home like I was a stray cat they'd tired of feeding. My fingers tightened around my mug, the warmth doing nothing to thaw the chill spreading through me. I was speechless, my throat tight as if I'd swallowed a spool of thread. Finally, I managed to croak. "You think it's okay to send your mother to answer phones in a group home just to eat?" Tears burned my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Lily just shrugged, her face as blank as an unchecked library book. "You always wanted independence, Eleanor," she said. "This is dignified." Dignified? I felt erased, like someone had taken a giant eraser to my entire life. The pain was a heavy weight, crushing my chest until I could barely breathe. I'd given her everything, my youth, my savings, my heart, And now I was nothing but a nuisance to be shipped off. The betrayal wasn't just a sting. It was like finding out your favorite quilt, the one you'd poured your soul into, had been tossed in the rag bin without a second thought. I couldn't hold it in anymore. My hands shook like leaves in a storm as I stood by the fireplace, my voice trembling like a bad karaoke singer. "I gave you everything, Lily," I said, tears pricking my eyes. "I adopted you when you were dying in an orphanage. I left my husband to save you. I worked myself raw, and now I'm a burden?" I'd hoped for a flicker of guilt, maybe a softened glance, but Lily's eyes blazed hotter than a July barbecue. "That was your choice, Eleanor," she snapped, her voice sharp enough to slice bread. "You owe me for dragging me through a broke life." She kicked my suitcase, my old, patched-up one with the wonky zipper, across the hardwood floor I'd paid to install. The thud echoed, and I swear the air vanished from the room, leaving me gasping like a fish on a dock. Her words were a knife to my heart, twisting deeper than anything I'd felt before. I'd thought shielding her would make her feel loved, but here she was, spitting venom like I'd ruined her life by saving it. The betrayal wasn't just a sting. It was a bone-deep ache. Then came a twist that knocked the wind out of me. Clara, James's mom, perched on the sofa in her designer scarf, smirked like a cat with a canary. "Maybe you should have kept your husband's money instead of playing saint," she said, her voice dripping with smugness. My blood ran cold like someone had dumped ice water over my head. I'd never told a soul that my ex was abusive, controlling every dime and threatening worse if I stayed. I'd left to protect Lily, taking nothing but her and my pride. How did Clara know? Later, I found out Lily had snooped through my old journals, stashed in a box in the attic. Those pages held my darkest days. Fearful notes about hiding bruises, planning my escape to keep Lily safe. Lily had twisted my pain into ammunition, sharing it with Clara to justify their scorn. The realization hit like a ton of bricks. My daughter hadn't just betrayed me, she'd weaponized my past. That double-cross lit a fire in me hotter than a grease fire in a diner. I stood there, suitcase at my feet, feeling like a fool who'd bet her life savings on a losing horse. I'd given Lily my everything, my youth, my heart, my home, and she'd handed my secrets to Clara like they were gossip at a book club. The hurt was raw like a paper cut doused in lemon juice, but it sparked something fierce. I was done being their punching bag, done letting them treat me like a library book they could check out and discard. I didn't tell them about the $5 million Beatrice. That secret was my ace, and I wasn't ready to play it, not yet. After Lily's betrayal and Clara's smug jab about my past, I was done being their doormat. My heart was a mess of fury and freedom, like a quilt stitched with rage and relief. I packed my suitcase, still wobbly from Lily's kick, and checked into a 5-star hotel downtown. The lobby sparkled with chandeliers, and my room had a bed so plush it felt like a cloud. For the first time in years, I felt a spark of power, like I'd found a winning lottery ticket in an old library book. I decided to show Lily and her crew who they'd crossed. I called Beatrice's lawyer, a kind man with a voice like warm molasses, to confirm my funds were ready. Then I started shopping for luxury condos, the kind with marble floors and views that make you forget your troubles. I ended up at a high-end sales office, all glass and chrome, smelling of fresh coffee and ambition. I was admiring a model of a condo with a rooftop garden when Sophia, Clara's cousin, strutted over. She was a real estate agent with a nasty attitude and a smile sharper than a paper cut. "A librarian here?" she sneered, loud enough for the whole room to hear. "You're here for the free snacks, Eleanor, aren't you?" The crowd, snooty types in designer suits, laughed, their chuckles stinging like a swarm of bees. I kept my cool, though my heart was pounding like a drum at a parade. I pulled out my phone, opened my banking app, and turned the screen toward Sophia. "Take a look," I said, my voice steady as a librarian shushing a noisy kid. The screen showed $3 million, clear as day. The room went quieter than a library after closing. Sophia's face turned paler than the pages of a faded book, her eyes wide like she'd seen a ghost. The crowd whispered, their laughter replaced by gasps. I didn't stop there. I pointed to 2 condos on the display, $2 million each, with floor-to-ceiling windows and balconies bigger than my old apartment. "I'll take both," I said, handing over my card. Paid in full, no hesitation. The sales assistant, a nervous young woman with a clipboard, nearly dropped her pen as she scrambled to process the sale. Sophia wasn't done, though. She crossed her arms, her lips curled like a bad plot twist. "You scammed some retiree for that cash, didn't you?" she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. My blood boiled, but I kept my smile. "Call the police if you're so sure," I said, calm as a summer breeze. And I did just that. I dialed 911 right there, explaining Sophia's slander. An officer arrived, one who'd dealt with her antics before, his badge glinting under the showroom lights. He gave her a stern warning about defamation, his voice firm but polite. I showed him my bank statement and Beatrice's notarized will, proving every dollar was legit. The sales manager, a man in a crisp suit who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, overheard and fired Sophia on the spot. "We don't tolerate that behavior," he said, his face redder than overdue fines. Walking out, I felt like I'd reclaimed a piece of myself, like finding a favorite book you thought was lost forever. But the hurt lingered, heavy as a stack of encyclopedias. Sophia's words echoed Lily's, calling me a burden, a nobody. They stung because they came from the same place, people I'd loved or trusted, reducing me to nothing. I knew this fight wasn't over, but for now I'd shown them I wasn't just some old librarian they could push around. I was Eleanor, and I was done playing nice. A week after I bought those condos, I decided to treat myself. My new place needed some pizzazz, so I headed to an upscale art gallery downtown. All polished wood and soft lighting that made everything look like $1,000,000. The air smelled of fresh paint and expensive perfume, and I was eyeing a $100,000 painting. A vibrant landscape with rolling hills that reminded me of the countryside where I'd sold quilts years ago. I was picturing it above my new sofa, my fingers brushing the frame, when Clara, James's mom, barged in with her book club cronies. They were a gaggle of women in loud scarves and clunky jewelry, chattering like magpies. Clara spotted me and her eyes narrowed like she'd caught me stealing cookies. "Eleanor, a librarian touching art?" she mocked, her voice loud enough to echo off the gallery walls. "You'll ruin it with your dusty hands." Her friend, a woman draped in a gaudy scarf that looked like it was fighting to escape, piled on. "She's pretending to be cultured with someone else's money," she said, smirking like she'd just won a debate. My blood boiled hotter than a pot of grits, and I wanted to scream loud enough to shake the chandeliers. But I'd learned from the condo showdown. Yelling wouldn't win this. Instead, I smiled, cool as a cucumber, and swiped my card for the painting. The gallery clerk, a young man with a bow tie, processed it so fast his hands shook. The crowd gasped, their whispers buzzing like a beehive. 100 grand just like that. Then came a twist that nearly made me drop my purse. A gallery worker, a sprightly woman with glasses perched on her nose, rushed over, her face lit up like a Christmas tree. "You're the woman who outbid that CEO for those condos," she said, loud enough for the whole room to hear. "I read about it on a local blog. 2 luxury units paid in full." Clara's cronies stopped mid-sip, their wine glasses hovering, their smugness fading faster than a cheap dye job. The crowd turned, eyeing me with a mix of awe and curiosity, like I was a character in one of those novels I used to shelve. Clara's face tightened, her lips pursed like she'd sucked a lemon. I looked her dead in the eye, my voice steady as a librarian's index finger. "This money's mine, Clara," I said. "Earned legally from Beatrice, my mentor, who valued me more than you or your family ever did." The words felt like tossing a match into dry grass, satisfying, but the fire in my chest still burned. Beatrice, that kind botanist, had seen me as more than a librarian. She taught me about plants, life, and standing tall. Clara's eyes darted to her friends, who were now whispering among themselves, their confidence crumbling like a stale biscuit. She muttered, "You'll regret humiliating us," and stormed out, her heels clicking like an angry metronome. Her cronies trailed behind, their chatter now a nervous hum. Later, I learned Clara had tipped off Lily about my condo buys, thinking they could team up to take me down with some kind of online smear campaign. Little did she know I was ready to fight fire with fire, but that's another story. Walking out of that gallery, painting receipt in hand, I felt a spark of triumph, like finding a rare book in a thrift shop. But the hurt clung to me, heavy as a wet quilt. Clara's words echoed Lily's, calling me a nobody, a fraud. It stung because it came from people I'd once trusted, people I'd loved. I wasn't just fighting for respect. I was fighting to remember who I was after they'd tried to erase me. After Clara's art gallery tantrum, I thought I'd seen the worst of their scorn. Then Lily took it to the internet, launching a live stream channel called My Mom Abandoned Me. She played the victim like a pro, crocodile tears streaming as she wailed, "She never cared about me. I worked so hard, and she ditched me when I got married." She spun a tale of woe, claiming I'd left her high and dry, and gullible fans ate it up, sending donations faster than kids chasing an ice cream truck. Watching her twist our life into lies on my laptop broke my heart worse than dropping my favorite teacup. I'd adopted Lily at 1 when she was dying from a blood disorder, gave up my marriage, my savings, everything to keep her alive. And now she was painting me as the villain? It hurt like a paper cut doused in hot sauce. I wasn't backing down, though. If Lily wanted to play dirty, I'd show her I could shelve books and throw shade. I started my own stream, The Truth About Lily's Abandonment, and dropped $50,000 in cash giveaways to grab attention. My hotel desk was covered in papers, hospital bills, adoption records, like I was prepping for the world's saddest book report. I went live, my old librarian glasses perched on my nose, and spilled everything. "I adopted Lily when she was dying in an orphanage," I said, my voice steady despite the lump in my throat. "I gave up my marriage, worked double shifts, sold quilts to pay her medical bills. I bought her a house and she kicked me out, called me a burden." I held up proof, yellowed hospital invoices, my adoption certificate with its official seal, and a grainy audio clip of Lily telling James, "Get Eleanor a job at a nursing home, she's useless here." My hands shook as I clicked through the slides, but I kept going, fueled by hurt and a need to be seen. The internet exploded like a popcorn machine left on too long. Comments flooded in. "She's a monster. You saved her life and she did this?" Viewers were angrier than me when the library ran out of my favorite mystery novels. Then came a wild twist I never expected. A hacker group, some tech-savvy folks who'd caught my stream, got touched by my story and dug into Lily's phone. They leaked texts she'd sent to Clara, proving she'd planned to guilt me into handing over my $5 million inheritance from Beatrice. One text read, "If we push her, she'll give us the money to shut us up." My jaw dropped reading it on my screen, the hotel's fancy lamp casting shadows over the words. The betrayal wasn't just Lily's lies. It was her cold, calculated plot to bleed me dry. Public opinion flipped faster than a pancake on a griddle. Lily's fans turned on her, flooding her stream with comments like, "You're the real villain," and "Shame on you." My lawyer, a sharp woman who could outsmart a fox, helped me file a lawsuit for defamation. Lily's channel got banned, her donation cash frozen, and her lies exposed like a bad plot in a dime store novel. Walking away from my laptop, I felt alive, finally seen for the mom who'd given everything. But the hurt lingered, sharp as a splinter. Lily's betrayal wasn't just personal, it was a public spectacle, and her text showed she'd never loved me, just my wallet. I'd fought back, but the ache of her deception clung to me like damp laundry. Time passed. I was done letting Lily and her schemes dim my shine. I hired a lawyer sharper than a tack, a woman who could make a contract sing, and we reclaimed the house I'd bought for Lily and James. Every brick, every shingle, I got it back legal and square. James, seeing Lily's true colors, filed for divorce, admitting she'd manipulated him into thinking I was the problem. He sent me a letter, handwritten on plain paper, saying, "I'm sorry, Eleanor. I didn't see her for who she was." It didn't erase the hurt, but it felt like a tiny bandage on a big wound. Lily, meanwhile, spiraled like a top gone wild. She moved into a shabby apartment with peeling paint and flickering lights, posting unhinged rants online, claiming I'd robbed her future. Her videos were all drama, no substance, like a soap opera nobody watched. Then came a twist that nearly made me choke on my coffee. My ex-husband, a man I hadn't spoken to in decades, called me out of the blue. His voice was gruff, like he'd been gargling gravel, but he spilled a wild story. Lily had tracked him down, trying to forge documents to prove I'd hidden money from her. She'd spun a tale that I'd cheated him out of a fortune, hoping he'd back her claims. He laughed, saying, "She's barking up the wrong tree." He warned me she'd hired a shady private investigator to dig into my life, sniffing for dirt. But the PI, a scruffy guy with a conscience, quit when I sent him my legal proof of inheritance, Beatrice's will, notarized and airtight. The documents were clearer than a library's catalog, showing every dollar was mine, fair and square. Lily's plan fizzled like a bad firecracker, leaving her looking foolish. In conclusion, I took my winnings and ran. I sold those 2 condos I'd bought for a cool $1 million profit, more than I'd ever dreamed of as a librarian. With the cash, I moved to a coastal village, to a cozy cottage with a garden bursting with roses that smelled sweeter than hope. The house was small, with creaky floors and a tiny porch, but it had a corner perfect for my painting hobby. My watercolors were awful. Think lopsided flowers and smudged skies, but they made me laugh. Friends from the library, those dear souls who'd shared my coffee breaks and book rants, visited often. We'd sit on my porch, sipping wine and cackling over my terrible art, the ocean breeze carrying our laughter. One friend, Marge, said, "Eleanor, your roses are better than your paintings." And we howled until our sides ached. Looking back, I didn't regret adopting Lily. Those years of stitching quilts for her medical bills, of choosing her over everything, shaped me. But I regretted not valuing myself sooner, not seeing I deserved more than being a footnote in her life. The betrayal nearly broke me, like a book with its spine cracked wide open, but it set me free. I was finally living for me, gardening under the sun, painting my messy masterpieces, surrounded by roses and real friends. The hurt still lingered like a faint coffee stain on a favorite page, but it didn't define me anymore. I'd found my own light, bright as a summer day, and I wasn't letting anyone dim it again.
Share your thoughts in the comments. What do you think about Eleanor's choice to keep her $5 million inheritance a secret? If you liked the story, subscribe to the channel and give us a like.